So can I talk about this Power Rangers Beats of Power thing for a moment? I'll assume you're nodding your heads in confirmation, and if not, too bad, because that's what we're talking about. So this has been out for a while. I think it was released sometime last year, but I only got around to this one now, so here we are. I'll ramble about it for a bit and we'll call it a review because, well, why not? Anywho, this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up using the open BOR engine and elements from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie game on the Sega Genesis, which was also a side-scrolling beat-em-up, so it makes perfect sense. Anyway, to further hammer in the point in redundancy, this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up where you can choose to play as any of the original 5 Power Rangers, and also Tommy, who comes in both green and white ranger flavors, and you basically fight your way past hordes of putty patrollers and the occasional selection of recycled monsters, including Goldar, the Scarlet Sentinel, and Mutitus for some reason. You start off unmorphed, but halfway through a level, your trusted ally Alpha 5 will teleport in to hand you your morpher for some reason, upon which you'll morph and get a health booster, along with a longer power beater for your special attacks. In some instances, monsters will grow big and you'll have to fight them in your Megazords, and stuff. Alright, so basically here's my take. If you played Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie on the Sega Genesis, then you've played Power Rangers Beats of Power, because at its core, this is very much a derivative of that movie game. There's a couple additional gimmicks here and there, a couple quote-unquote new things, and some bits taken from the Super Nintendo games, but for the most part, this is a straightforward, paint-by-numbers, side-scrolling beat-em-up that has been done before and doesn't feel all that different from what's been done before, other than a bit of roughness around the edges. Even some of the intermissions are taken directly from the Genesis game, with only the original 16-bit images replaced with lower resolution screenshots. And that's it, really. What you got here is essentially a rehashing of an old Sega Genesis game with some video and music from the TV show, a couple other nooks and crannies, and that's about it. Certainly nowhere near the fan-wanking of best Power Rangers game ever that this thing's been getting. But, in all fairness, it's rather competently done for the most part, and plays about as well as any competently made side-scrolling beat-em-up would. Each of the 7 Rangers have their own set of slightly different moves, but for the most part, play almost the same way. Even the special moves feel a bit lacking in this regard, as they'll either be a generic dashing attack or a projectile throw. I felt that there could have been more variety in that department. The game tosses you putty patrollers up the wazoo, and unlike the Genesis game, they're at least in different colors and do different things, but you're still fighting endless waves of putties for the majority of the game, and it does get a bit boring after a while. There are occasional bits to break up the monotony, but these are few in between. The Zord fights, where you can control either of the Season 2 Thunder Zords or the original Zords from Season 1, play similarly to the Ranger levels, although the Zords do more of a short hop than a high jump. But it's more or less the same thing. The challenge in Beats of Power comes from the numbers game, as you're swarmed by putties on more than one occasion. Boss fights are a little more bearable, as they'll telegraph attacks ahead of time so you can get out of the way. There are very few pickups in the game, aside from the power morpher that Alpha will toss you, that you could completely leave behind by the way, and the occasional health pickup that's hidden in some scenery. Okay, look, in regards to gameplay, it works well enough as a straight-up beat-em-up, save for the occasional oddball instance. But I can't help but feel that more could have been done here to make a competent Power Rangers beat-em-up feel like a great one. I got this feeling particularly when playing the final level of the game, where it starts to really pick up steam and then it's over and the game ends, and it just felt underwhelming overall. As stated, the majority of the graphics are ripped from a couple older Mighty Morphin video games that originally appeared on the Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo, the majority coming from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie game on the Genesis, and these look fine for the most part. They were pretty good in their original formats, and they're just as good here. The stage backdrops, if nothing else, look a touch brighter here than they do on the original game, but that's about it really. However, there are some original stage designs like the bridge level, the Dark Dimension, and the Command Center. They look pretty good, they fit with the rest of the recycled stuff. There's also a couple additional bits like the Green Ranger, who looks alright, but sticks out from the rest of the recycled stuff. Probably because the sprite set was modified, which, okay, fine, I get that. The one thing that strikes me as odd are the teenagers though. For the most part, they're ripped from the SNES games and they look fine, but the faces are somewhat blurry for some reason. They weren't like that in the original game. Oh well, there's some nice explosion effects, some transparency things, videos intercut with gameplay of morphs and things of that nature. They're fine. Much like the graphics, the audio of Beats of Power is taken from the show, by which I mean the actual show's soundtrack. The same songs you hear on the show, or at least the instrumental versions, is featured as background music for this game. Obviously, said soundtrack is not being heard here for obvious reasons. But setting that aside, meh. I know it's a highlight for some people, but I was just meh. Would have preferred something different, but that's just me. In any case, it sounds fine. Sound effects are alright. There's a nice touch where each ranger has their own voice bites and they sound relatively good for the most part, although there are some voice bites that sound a bit rough. Overall, Power Rangers Beats of Power, it's alright. Best Power Rangers game ever? Badass? Insert any other hyperbole here? Not really. Beats of Power is a typical straightforward side-scrolling beat-em-up that does the bare minimum, and in that regard, it's alright. It's simple, straightforward, and that's it. It follows a good stretch of storylines from the second season of Mighty Morphin, and not much more than that, and I think that's what holds it back. It's just a sampler of what could have been something a little more than what it is, something a little more deserving of the hype and praise. I suppose for someone who's never played any of the older Mighty Morphin video games, Beats of Power might be worthwhile to play, and for a fan-based effort, it's certainly a commendable basis of what could have been something great. Maybe if the designer decides on a sequel or maybe an update that adds more to what's here, that would be something worthy of praise. Beats of Power as it is merely okay, but not much more than that.